National Prosecuting Authority says it has challenges with investigating apartheid-era crimes. The NPA appeared before Parliament this week, and MPs raised their frustration with how slowly these cases are coming to court. So for more on this, we're joined by Hennie van Vuuren, who has written extensively about apartheid-era commercial crimes. Hennie, good to have you, and good morning to you. I have to say, in as much as politicians were frustrated about some of these crimes not, seeing the justice they deserve, even the greatest South Africans equally frustrated that it seems we might not see, some of those cases and some of the perpetrators come to book. That is warranted, right? And is that the reality of the South African story, that some of these cases might never see their day in court?
Yeah, good morning. I think we all have a good reason to be frustrated, and certainly frustrated at the appearance of Advocate Shamila Batoy, at Minister Lamola, Minister of Justice yesterday, and other colleagues before the Parliamentary Committee. They certainly provided no clear direction on what they have done and what they are going to do to deal with high-profile cases, and of course not only the broader issues of state capture, of the Steinhoff and other cases, but the issues of apartheid-era crimes. I think it was very clear from yesterday's presentation that, again, there were apologies, there were these sort of half-hearted mea culpas from Advocate Batoy's deputy, Advocate Rodney de Kock, but that doesn't cut any mustard. They are weak, and that's an indication, frankly, of an NPA that is quite uncaring, and that's not because one wishes just to label them as such, Tumelo, but it's, I think, a reflection of practice over many years. And that practice has included, as we now know through evidence that's been heard in court, and is very clearly in court findings, that there was political interference to stop the prosecution of the murdered, of the disappeared, the perpetrators who had done this during apartheid. This was in the 2000s when Minister Bridget Mabandla was Minister of Justice, and that was clearly a political project that was at play. But what we saw then with these cases languishing, where the NPA had the information, the families, many of these families have put together dockets of information and memos that the NPA had at its disposal. It would be able to follow through with those investigations, and they simply failed to do so. And Tumelo, I think what we heard yesterday from Advocate Batoy was an indication that many of the people, the perpetrators, would die, in fact, before there would be any prosecutions. And it's an extraordinary admission of defeat by Advocate Batoy, that she simply doesn't have the appetite or the interest to tackle matters which she knows have been lying on her table for at least 3 years since she entered office.
Yeah, Hennie, what does this then do to the reputation of the NPA? I mean, to the credibility, or at least lack of at this point, of the NPA, especially based on what we heard yesterday on the admissions, some of the apologies, the admissions that they should have handled certain cases a lot better. We're seeing those pictures there, of some of the victims of some of these atrocious crimes, and even the committee learning just last week that the NPA had failed, to keep by its undertaking to update the families of the Credit 4. What does this do to the reputation then of the NPA?
Well, I think that the crucial thing is now, how's the NPA going to deal with this? And what we did see as response yesterday wasn't sufficient. What we heard, I would argue, Tumelo, is what Advocate Batoy was telling us yesterday, and her colleagues were that they would be considering an inquiry by a retired judge. And we anticipate, and I think many in civil society, that this will be a closed process, that a report will be handed to Advocate Batoy, whereas many activists have been arguing that what we now require is an open process, one where all of this is unpicked and all of the dirty laundry is not. I think the politicians don't want that. I think that the political heads at the NPA don't want it. I think there are many prosecutors and police who are no doubt frustrated, as the public are. But it is crucial that we know who has been blocking willfully as a political project, and who has simply not been doing their job and need to be held to account or removed from the NPA, frankly fired if they haven't been doing the job. Now, I think that's the area that we need right now. And I think that the NPA, who wants to control a message, is worried about that. And then we need a plan, just like we need a plan on how the NPA is going to deal with high-level financial crimes, which they haven't. And I think that Advocate Herman Cronje's departure gives us an opportunity to shine a light on that. But we need a plan on how are you going to deal with the high-level crimes of state capture that
Absolutely.
have resulted in human rights abuses, and on the TRC matters as well.
Yeah, but equally so, we need a plan, don't you think, Hennie, on how they would deal with the various challenges that Shamila Batohi raised yesterday. I want to quote her. She said that, and I quote, "We're trying to bring justice to the families, but the reality is that many of these cases, there probably won't be any prosecutions because of various challenges." So what are these challenges, and what's the plan to overcome these challenges?
Well, you know, Tamela, I think that Advocate Batohi has clearly been in the office for 3 years. There is a rear guard who fight against, who have been undermining the work of the NPA and very clearly are involved in a political project to do so. There are also a ream of people who simply are not interested or not competent, or just while waiting for their pensions at the NPA, not doing their job. It's the job of the leadership of Advocate Batohi and the people around her to move those people out, as I said again, to fire them if necessary, to elevate the good people in the NPA and to hire competent young people who will come in and lead this institution. If you aren't doing that, then you are failing and you are creating a crisis. And therefore, I think we need to recognize what's happening in the NPA as a crisis. And that is a moment of reflection and of picking things up and of fixing things. And I think until that happens, you can't just sugarcoat this thing, which I fear that Advocate Batohi and her colleagues are doing. We all want the NPA to succeed. It's in the interest of justice and the interest of South Africa's people. But right now, if you don't admit there's a problem, you don't confront it, which I think is not happening right now, I don't think we move forward as a country.
Well, I appreciate this conversation. You're speaking to us this morning, Hennie van Vuuren, author of the book Apartheid, Guns and Money.